by this point, your child or your family is probably back in the rhythm of a normal school year, or lots of Mother's Day outs are back in session, or preschools, daycares, whatever it may be. As we head into the middle of August, most of us have kind of adjusted to a new rhythm, right? And with that, we really want to focus in terms of, okay, what are the physical manifestations of going back to school? What are some of the psychological manifestations of going back to school? And when do we need to be worried as parents, and what can we do to help? Right. So first, from the physical standpoint, we as pediatricians, we know this is when we start to get really busy with the infectious diseases and kids getting sick. We already have seen an uptick in terms of quote unquote the junk, right? And so the lots of respiratory illnesses that are going around, including COVID. And to help frame it, here's some information in terms of how often you can expect your kid to get sick, and then what to do about it when it happens. So the average kid, their first year, either at school or daycare, they are going to catch up to 10 viruses. That is one a month. Each of these viral illnesses lasts 10 to 14 days. And so it's very, very common for a kid, as we navigate through the fall to the winter, for them to have a runny nose and a cough more often than not, especially if it's in their first few years of either school or daycare. This is totally, totally normal. That does not mean that the child has a weak immune system or that we need to be concerned. Quite the opposite. This is actually boosting the child's immune system, getting them stronger so that later on in life, when they see these viruses, they've got those memory cells that can take care of it and can fight against it and get rid of it faster. So very, very, very normal. If you feel like, hey, my kid has been sick a ton, we're happy to talk through that, but very common as we head through December, head into December through the fall, for it to feel like, man, it feels like over the last few months, more often than not, my child has had some sort of illness. So what do we do, right? The first is they don't always have to miss school for these types of things. So if you look here, Dr. Johnson provides his Dr. J family rules for school. And it's very easy. Lots of times parents are concerned, okay, do I send them to school? Do I not? If your kid has a fever, keep them home. If they are throwing up, keep them home. Other than that, you are probably safe to send them, and they are probably unlikely contagious. And if we held our kids out for every time they had the sniffles or a little bit of cough or a little bit of stomach pain, they would like never go to school, right? So fevers, actively throwing up. If not, send them. It's good to discuss these with your kids ahead of time if they're of the age where they can really understand it, so that there's a little less negotiating going on each morning and you've already made the decision and they know what the expectation is. But those are certainly reasons to keep your kid home from school. Otherwise, send them. The when they're sick with these colds, sore throats, coughs, congestion, whatever it may be, Motrin, Tylenol, lots of fluids, humidified air can be good, a little bit of rest, and they almost always bounce back just fine. But as always, we are right here, and we are happy to help you navigate that via text message or seeing your kid in the office. We see tons of behavioral and psychological changes as we get back into school, back into a new rhythm, right? So we see lots of things, especially for our kindergartners or kids going to a new school or being away from their parents for the first time. That first week, lots of school avoidance and separation anxiety. It's very, very normal and appropriate for a kid to be a little anxious those first few weeks of school in terms of leaving their parents and being away from the house for longer periods of time. This can manifest itself in a few ways. Stomach aches, headaches, this generalized, I don't feel good. And it's not like the kids are trying to trick us. Your body can truly have these somatic symptoms when the anxiety kicks in. But over time, if you keep with that rhythm and the kid continues to learn, okay, I go to school and then mom or dad picks me up and I come home and everything's normal and I'm back to a safe space. That's how they work through it, is through consistency and not avoidance. The avoidance only manifests and feeds that anxiety. And so we need to be consistent with sending our kids to school, especially here at the beginning of the year, even when they may be a little bit anxious. When do we worry about that anxiety, right? It's especially for the separation anxiety. If you're over a month into school and drop off still feels like a ginormous battle, please talk to us. Like, we've got some things that can help with this, and we want to help. Certainly to be expected those in the first few weeks, those kind of minor struggles. But if it is turning into a long, painful, and dramatic ordeal every morning, please let us know, especially if it's lasting weeks and weeks and weeks over a month. Very normal as well, and Emily touches on this, of anxiety to build as we head back into school and kids are in a little bit less of a comfortable situation. So when do you as a parent need to be worried of, okay, this feels like more than just nerves. This feels like there may be some sort of thing going on with true anxiety here. How do we tease that out? I think Emily really, really paints a nice picture here of clinical anxiety as persistent, intense, and difficult to manage. Very normal for kids to get nervous in isolated situations around new and either concerning or scary situations. Normal for those nerves to build and then go away. But if you notice that your kid is just always anxious, always worried, seems to be on edge, you're having a hard time getting rid of it, that's something that we want to talk through, and that would be totally appropriate for you to be concerned about as a parent. And then lastly, we see all sorts of new behaviors when kids go to school. Lots and lots and lots of kind of noise around the ADHD space. And we all know the typical symptoms of ADHD with hyperactivity, inattention, kids that can't sit still, can't focus. Just wanted to highlight two kind of overlooked symptoms that you could be aware of as we head into the school year. The first is that your child struggles to make true, meaningful social relationships that are long lasting. We see this with kids with ADHD because the really hyperactive kids kind of struggle to bring their energy down to match their peers, or the inattentive kids actually have difficulty kind of hanging in a back and forth social situation with a conversation with another kid that requires, like, a give and a take, and they kind of lose attention and they go off somewhere else. So if it's associated with other concerns, and we are picking up that your child has difficulty either maintaining or building these long-lasting, meaningful friendships, that's one thing that could catch our attention a little bit when we think about ADHD. The second is behavioral outbursts. This one's a little bit more tricky because, especially as kids build stamina through the school year from a physical standpoint, you are going to see behavioral outbursts and anger, especially towards the end of the day. Like, kids are just so worn out physically from having to sit in school and focus all day. But if this is something that's new, that's been persistent, and it's getting in the way, and you feel like, okay, my kid's holding on at school, but then at home we are seeing a different child, we want to talk about that, because there may be some sort of compensation there during the school day to help override their ADHD, meaning a kid has underlying ADHD and they're working so hard to focus or sit still that by the time they get home they are totally empty. And that's when you see these big behavioral outbursts and those big emotions come through. So if that's new and something that has been different since starting school, please reach out. Please talk to us about that. A few notes on the direct primary care. One, I'm a firm believer that this, as we head back into school, this is where the DPC model really has tons of value. Why? Because your schedules get busier, and it gets a little bit harder to navigate those little things because you don't have as much margin in your day, because you're picking up, you're dropping off, you're working around a school schedule. So how does the direct primary care model really help during the school year? One, you can text us about questions without having to pull your kid out of school. We can do lots of visits, quote unquote visits, and get lots of questions and concerns addressed without you having to go pick up your kid from school, fill out all the notes and all that stuff, bring them to us physically in person, and then send it back. So we can do so much without the kid missing school, and we know that's what's best for them, and that's what's best for you. If your kid is sick and they need to be seen, we can almost always do same-day visits, and we can work that around your schedule. And similarly, if you're just holding your kid out of school because they're working on a really bad cough that's getting worse, but you know they're quote-unquote fine, and you are comfortable taking care of them at home, a quick text message or phone call, and we can get you a school note to help make sure that's covered as you're doing your due diligence. And then lastly, since your doctor is just a text message away, it's really easy as new symptoms pop up. You can say, hey, we can send them to school with this. right? Right? And we'll say, yeah, please send them. And you can, with confidence, send your kid. So again, they're missing less days of school. You're missing less days of work. And you were keeping that schedule nice and consistent because it's so easy to get a hold of us. One last thing. So from a political standpoint, there's been some new legislation or laws or something that got passed through the big beautiful bill, and with that, it is now mandated that HSAs have to reimburse for DPC membership fees. So if you have an HSA starting January 1st, it will cover your direct primary care or your direct pediatrics membership fee. This is $150 a person. That's what is mandated that it covered. Most HSA will cover more than that, but it's now mandated that they cover $150 a month per person, or a total of $300 per family. What does this mean for you? If you are not using your HSA to pay for direct pediatrics membership, you should look into it. As we head towards the open enrollment season in the fall, if your employer or you have the option of selecting a high deductible plan that has an HSA component, even possibly an employer contribution, that is a great way to save money and get better health care. And rarely are things that win-win, but if you can lower your monthly health insurance premiums, increase how much you're able to put into your HSA, and use that pre-tax money to pay for the direct pediatrics membership, which we're confident you see the value in, then that is a win-win, and that is our goal, to make healthcare cheaper and better. And we can do that, right? And so with this new legislation, you now are guaranteed to have coverage from your HSA. We can now advertise that. You will be able to, 100% of Americans will be able to pay for a direct primary care membership with HSA dollars, which is not something that we could say previously. If you have any questions, that stuff is super confusing. So we're happy to navigate and talk through things in terms of what we've read, things that we've been looking into, as there's been tons of research and announcements and all that stuff that's coming out. So we're keeping our finger on the pulse of this stuff, and we're happy to try to help each individual family help navigate as best as we can.